So it's TaylorMade Iron Week, and in this video I'm going to help you strike these irons better, something that we probably all do with a little bit of help with. So in order to strike these irons better, there's a few things that we have to do. We have to make contact with the ground. The club has to interact with the ground. So many golfers are scared to hit the ground, pulling away from the ground, very often because they've got a history of hitting the ground and it being a poor result. We have to change that mindset. So we're going to talk a little bit about transition. I'm going to give you a little exercise that you can do, which is going to help you understand and appreciate what should happen in transition. And what that exercise is going to do is help you hit the ground later. What do all the best players in the world do? Well, they all strike the ground, but they strike the ground target side of the ball, over this side somewhere. And that's why you see them with their iron clubs taking divots. Those divots are generally an indication of a pretty solid strike. So what do we need to hit the ground later? Well, when we look at our impact compared to our setup, our impact should see our hips, our lower body closer to the target. That generally means there's more weight on that lead side. We tend to see around about 80% of impact as a general rule for good golfers. We often see, or we should see, the club shaft lent slightly towards the target as well. So if we look at our setup, which would be somewhere here, impact would see the hips more forwards and the hands more forwards. And if you can do those things, you can hopefully see how that would cause me to land the club around about this area here, which is what we're after. So many of you, if you're struggling, will have the hips where they were at setup, if not a little back. You might have the hand a little back. And if I put myself in this position, my contact with the ground is always going to be behind the ball. And that's why we get those poor strikes. And that's why we get those kind of bent arms when we're trying to pull away from it. So how does the transition help this? Well, the transition is our time or our chance to move towards those elements. So here's the drill I want you to do. You're going to take a golf club, you're going to place it across your hips. And I want you to open up your hands so you've got your palms facing away from you. And from here, what I'd love you to do is just make a little backswing, just a little rotation. And it doesn't have to be a complete full backswing, but just a sort of simply making a backswing movement, I should say. Then what I'd love you to do is take that whole golf club and try and do this without any rotation in that club shaft, and try and push that club shaft towards the target. So you can see from that face on how I'm shifting my lower body towards the target. And with any luck, there's not a huge amount of rotation happening in that golf club. Once I feel like I've got the majority of my weight onto my lead side, I'm going to take this golf club and using my glove hand, I'm going to pull that grip around and behind me. And here I end up in my finished position with my weight fully on my lead side, my body extended, hopefully watching my ball fly somewhere towards the middle of that green. So the downswing isn't made up of two movements. But in order to help you with this strike and get the club to land later, it's often advisable to feel that there's two movements. So we make a backswing. There is a lateral shift, which I'm activating by pulling that club towards the target. Once that weight is in that lead side, I add my rotation. So you can think of it as a shift and then a rotation. So many golfers, when they get to the end of the backswing, the first thing they do is they start to rotate. And you can see how the golf club is rotating, but the weight is staying on this back leg. That's really going to make it quite difficult for you to strike those irons really well. Just one point to note, as I'm doing this, notice how my head, not really moving a huge amount. There's a little bit of movement there, but not a huge amount. Head staying still is really important right through until we make contact with the ball, and then we can allow the head to release and get taller. So that little exercise should help you understand what the legs should do. And it's going to give you an idea and give you a chance to feel what a good transition is going to be like. Ultimately, bring the golf club in and try and work towards the same movements. Now, I don't think I'm going to go anywhere near that flag. That is a real sucker pin on the right-hand side of that green. So if I can just go left of that flag, middle of the green, I would be pretty happy with that. There's my nice balanced finish. Ball should be landing in the middle of the green, and it does. Divot started after the ball, and the reason it started after the ball is because I was able to shift my weight to my lead side earlier through what I did in transition. Do that and you will start to pure those irons more consistently from the fairway, hit more greens, and probably shoot lower scores as well.